Welcome to the Thinking Practitioner podcast.
A podcast where we dig into the fascinating issues, conditions, and quandaries in the massage and manual therapy world today.
I'm Whitney Lowe.
And I'm Til Luchau.
Welcome to the Thinking Practitioner. And welcome to the Thinking Practitioner podcast, which is supported by ABMP, the Associated Bodywork and Massage Professionals. ABMP membership gives professional practitioners like you a package including individual liability insurance, free continuing education, and quick reference apps, online scheduling, and payments with Pocket Suite, and much more.
ABMP CE courses, podcast, and Massage and Bodywork magazine always feature expert voices and new perspectives in the profession, including articles with myself, Til Luchau, and you, Whitney Lowe. Thinking Practitioner listeners can save on joining ABMP at abmp.com/thinking. Hey, Whitney, how you doing? And what are we talking about today?
Good day, sir. We're recording this just before the U.S. Thanksgiving holiday, so it's getting to be the holiday season for everybody around the world, and it's also getting. I was thinking the other day, we're getting close to our anniversary date of launching the podcast, which I think we launched in December of 2019. I think, is that right?
Yeah, I'll take your word for it. That's true, though. I do remember it's this time of year.
Yeah, it was this time of year, and I seem to remember it being right alongside COVID, if I remember correctly. So it was like 2020, I think we were getting going. So I think that's about right. But
could it be 5 years?
Yeah,
my goodness,
it's been a while. So anyway, this time of year always brings around some reflection, I think, for us. And so we're going to have a little bit of a reflection episode today for you and I, both talking about some important things that I think for each of us and for our listeners too, that help let you reflect on and sort of look at how this work that we do shapes our lives. And we were going to sort of couch that in an overall big theme of how did massage or manual therapy change your life? So we got a lot of sort of specific ways that we want to try to look at that, but just starting off, we covered this a little bit in our very first two episodes when we talked about our backgrounds, but I can't remember exactly how much we touched on it.
No, me neither. That's like you said, maybe that's been 4 or 5 years. And I remember you interviewed me, I interviewed you on our backstory. So it's nice that you're bringing that back around.
Yeah.
And let me just put a plug in here. Listeners, we would love to hear your story, how has massage or manual therapy or bodywork changed your lives? We'll give you some instructions at the end, but basically just email us or message us your story. We'd love to hear it and maybe even share it on the air next episode or something.
Yeah, that sounds good. So
where
just
do we start?
For a reminder, how did you get into this? What was your starting point of getting started there?
Me, Til?
Yeah.
How did I get into this? It's a little hard to say the exact moment I got into this, but what I remember is shopping in a bookstore in London. I was there as a teenager, about 15, maybe. Yeah, probably 15. And in this bookstore was an interesting little book, had an odd shape and nice pen and ink drawings. And it was George Downing's massage book, which had been published by, out of the Esalen Institute there. And this was my first encounter with the idea of massage as a practice. And what really struck me about this book was that he emphasized in today's terms, how holistic the practice of massage was. It wasn't a professional book per se, but he's talking, if you want to be really good at this, you might, what did he say? You might work on some movement discipline like Tai Chi, or you might actually make some bread so you get a feel for things in your hands, or do ceramics. And that's really it captured my imagination in a way that I think laid the groundwork for my later, more professional diving into.
Yeah. It is interesting how many people were kind of sort of set down that path by George Downing's book, because there were so few books back then that really covered this in any kind of detail. And so those few things, and again, this was, of course, long before the internet, video, and all that kind of stuff was out and around. So you went to bookstores to learn things, or you went to the library and tried to get books to learn about things like that. So
that was what browsing used to be, going to a bookstore and browsing the shelves.
Yeah. Yep.
That's right. Well, that's my kind of origin moment that I can identify. How about you, Whitney?
Mine was a little bit different. I was in graduate school studying psychology, and my ex-wife was starting massage school and was telling me every day when she came home all these fascinating things they were learning about the mind-body connection and everything. And I was like, that sounds really cool, And I was getting kind of burned out in my graduate school program and decided I really wanted to learn some more about the mind-body connection. And so I was also looking for a way to kind of make my work schedule be a whole lot more flexible around my schooling hours. And so I thought, I could just go do this massage thing and just learn a little bit. And then I'd use that for just a little job to, help me pay the rent and do those kind of things while I was finishing my graduate school program. And of
Just a little
course,
job, you said?
just a little job. That's right. That was my view at the time, So,
Uh-huh.
and then of course I went to massage school, and then that, like so many people, that changed everything. That was the end of my graduate school program in psychology, and I got sort of on this track for studying massage. And of course, this is the mid to late 1980s back in Atlanta in the South. And so when I went and told my parents that I was stopping graduate school to go to massage school, that didn't go over so well. You know,
Really? That must have been a moment. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah,
Fascinating.
yeah. So it was a launching pad, obviously, and it's
Uh-huh.
always interesting to me to hear these stories from everybody else about how they got started, and that story of familiarity of I went to massage school and it changed me, is a
Yes.
real common theme. I think that we hear from people. It changed me in ways that I had no idea it would.
That's right. And it's been interesting to watch over the years. It's been about the same amount of time for me, about 4 decades of doing this work, how massage school has become a kind of entry point or rite of passage into the whole world of whatever this is. The bigger field that bodywork and massage is a part of, transformative care, health and healing, understanding the body-mind connection, whatever it is. But so many young people are going into massage either as a career focus, which wasn't really as clearly lined out then as it is now, or as an entryway into the broader field of, you said, the mysteries of the body-mind connection.
Yeah.
And that was mine. Like I remember mentioning it to you 4 or 5 years ago that I was really way at a choice point. I studied some body work at the Esalen Institute and practiced there and was on the massage crew. And then I had this chance to start a graduate program in psychology, and I was really weighing this out. And it was sequential for me. And at the end, it was very practical. It was like, okay, so if I go to the Rolf Institute first and really consolidate my abilities to do that work, that's going to make a lot more sense practically. Then I can basically earn my way through graduate school that way.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I kind of did that. Didn't, I ended up spending a lot more time in the body work realm than I anticipated. Loved it a lot, and had a psychotherapy practice. Did other things as well, but this has always been there and emerged as in the kind of the calling level, like as a personal calling or a professional calling. That emerged over time.
Yeah.
It was a clear focus for me that well, it wasn't a moment. There was more of an emergence of that.
Would you say that your current approach to what you do and what you're focusing on is still relatively closely in line with what you thought this was when you got started, or did that change significantly for you?
What I thought this was when I got
Yeah.
started. Boy, let me see if I can remember because what did I think it was when it started? It was a holistic practice. I mean, that word is so old and overused that I am almost hesitant to use it, but it really was the vision in George Downing's book, which he was really reflecting what was happening at Esalen, where I ended up going and living and studying and working,
Mm.
really was that it comes from who we are, even more than what we do.
Yeah.
And so we were the project, not just the learning involved, but the becoming and the embodying
Hmm.
and the being and the experiencing.
Yeah.
And then we're catalyzing experiences for our clients more than delivering a protocol, procedure, or technique.
Sure. Yeah.
And that, again, that's got its roots in probably the psychological influences or the spiritual influences or something, as well as the tangible somatic work that was being done there. So, in that sense, no, it's still a transformative practice
Hmm.
for me. And those are the most interesting people I work with, the ones that see it the same way, the ones that are interested in hands-on body work as a means to uh, engage with people on multiple levels and work with things that are mysterious and important and deep. And I think of Ida Rolf's often quoted statement that, uh, you know, the body is not all there is, but that's what she could get her hands on.
Uh-huh.
That's
Yeah.
where she focused.
Yeah.
And it's uh, it's something about the way that we're working with much more than just what we touch that I was interested in, and it's still part of the interest there. Now we can start a list. I bet you got one too of how many things are different in my the way I think about it now than when I
Right.
started.
Yeah.
But how would you address that? What's been your change?
Well, for me, I think it is a quite a substantial change because I don't think I took it real seriously at the outset. Like I said, I thought it was just going to be a sort of thing that I would do that would be just, some things working on sort of relaxation massage and just a job, that was going to be convenient and kind of fun, convenient and sort of fun thing, but not really serious. And so I don't think I was taking it real seriously at first. And then probably halfway through massage school, I started shifting and thinking about like, there's a lot more to this thing that's really kind of like I see a lot of other stuff going on here. And then, for a while, when I got out of massage school, was a little bit ambiguous about where I was going and what was I landing into and what kind of work was I going to be doing because I had still been coming from that psychology background and thinking
Hmm.
partially that I might head back in that direction, but I also had ended up working for a chiropractor and started to get really interested in like the people who were coming in who were in a lot of pain. And I was thinking like, and, I think it was like the first time I really helped somebody that was in pain. I was like, this is cool. You know, I really like the idea of being able to change things in people's lives and really alleviate their pain with this work. There's something to that. And so that was kind of like, oh, okay, this means that there's got a lot more that I need to learn. And that I think that kind of set me off in a very different direction.
There is something satisfying about being actually able to help people. And it sounds like me, you saw that as a technical challenge as much as anything else.
Yeah.
I worked my way in college as an auto mechanic, and that was my first job at the Esalen Institute. So I had an interest in technical stuff.
Hmm.
And that was the interface. It was the interface between the actual stuff and the things and the ways we can strategize and use logic to accomplish things. And then the end result of actually having an impact on some way somebody feels and lives and moves,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah. So how is it like, would you say, we've sort of touched on that a little bit, but, changing your sort of worldview and personal growth process, has there been like significant stepping stones or what have been really the biggest impacts there?
Yeah, since I said something about transformation, I should talk about that for myself. I mean, there's a list, and it's almost like because of how much of my life it's been, it's really hard to tease that out. I mean, I got into
Yeah.
this so early, my early 20s, that I spent, 40 years or so doing it, that it's hard to even know what was related to body work and what was just part of me growing up and
Hmm.
growing into the person I am. But I could say that receiving and practicing this work has really put my uh like taking care of myself so that I could show up and do the work, so that I could actually feel good about embodying what I was trying to evoke or ask for in my clients. It's been a great frame personally, professionally. It's like uh it means taking my health a lot more seriously, and that includes physical health too, but also the ability to be emotionally present and to follow what's happening with someone rather than jump in and try to impose what I think should be happening. That's an
Yeah.
ongoing process, ongoing practice and process that
Yeah.
this has really been a way for me to work with and learn and correct around.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's more. Let me think about it. How about you? Do you have an answer?
Yeah, I would I would say that there's been a lot of things in here that were and I've struggled to try to figure out like how does one make some of this stuff work into a curriculum for training massage and bodywork practitioners
Oh,
because
right.
these are
That's that.
so many valuable skills. But
Yes.
I live right now very prominently, and I think, it's kind of like the orientation of my work is much more in sort of the scientific medical realm of things and
Yeah.
evidence-based practice and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I also never forget my roots, and a lot of folks don't really know that about, my background. When I was studying psychology, I was into all kinds of stuff of the transpersonal psychology and the, spiritual practices, meditation and Tai Chi and all, energy stuff and all that kind of thing. And those studies and things were an important part, I think, of helping me become grounded as a clinician and as a practitioner, and developing compassion for individuals and things like that are crucial parts of being a really good clinical practitioner. And they're just like, they don't get emphasized as much, those skills. But I do think that they are critical in becoming really, really skilled in working with people.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking too about how underrated or underappreciated our basic request of our clients. It varies according to the way you think about it and your modality,
Yeah.
but we're asking a lot of clients. Just asking someone to relax is a huge request.
Yeah.
And that's a body-mind experience, to actually feel oneself, let go of whatever tension, protection, habits, mindset, etc.,
Mm-hmm.
that we're coming in with, and to be the person with whom someone feels invited, safe, interested to do that with is a huge thing.
Yeah.
It's a place, it's an honor. It's a place, I approach that with a lot of reverence and respect. And it's easy to forget how much I'm not really asking of my clients. And of
Mm-hmm.
course, there's more, like being willing to move, being willing to lie down while I stand up. All those things that we ask of our clients that essentially are surrender or letting go on their part.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That I think it's been a great path for me to feel like I could uh, ask that
Mm-hmm.
essentially, and be the person that could accompany someone as they go through that on their own side.
So what were some of the most kind of impactful things that you feel like your clients have taught you about that process in terms of, connecting with others and relationship things? What have been some of those most impactful things
Uh,
they've taught you?
I'm just thinking like stay in touch along the way.
Mm-hmm.
There's this tradition in some kinds of massage of not talking,
Mm-hmm.
and that's great and fine. And yet I remember, thank goodness, and it's kind of mortifying to think about now, but I remember a client, I was taking her through the Rolfing series, and session 6 was classically face down, working on the back of the legs and the glutes and the low back. And I'm just doing my diligence and I'm being sensitive with my hands. But at some point, she sits up, turns around, and says, "Listen, I just need you to tell me what you're doing step by step when you're working back there on me." I was like, "Oh my God, of course. I am so sorry." But as I was I felt like I was, we explained what was going to happen. She lay down, I went to work. But to stay in touch along the way, I mean, as simple as that sounds, of course. So I think it's that understanding that it's an always renewable contract, or it's always in the moment connection that counts
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
much as anything else.
Yeah.
And that's a life lesson
It
for sure.
is for sure. Yeah. I think one of the most significant things that I learned from clients is uh, that there's not rules in many of the ways that we thought there were a lot of rules in terms of the way we were taught things, like do this, don't do that. And like, when when you're working with somebody with this kind of thing, this is what you do. And then the clients come in and they're just like, it doesn't follow the rules. And you have to really become um, creatively attuned to what's going on in that person's life. And it's like, I can remember a time working with a woman early on who had really, really serious carpal tunnel syndrome and bilaterally. And to the point at which she really couldn't hold silverware to eat. I mean, it was really, really bad. And I'm just like, I have no idea what do you do in this kind of situation. And I'll say, well, the first thing is just she, in going through her story, clearly had not been treated well and with respect and with compassion by the healthcare system. Everybody had just sort of passed her on through workman's comp and all this kind of stuff. And it just was clear that the first thing that was necessary was just to kind of be there with her and really know that I was going to do anything that I could to really be just as compassionate as possible. And just treatment started with just the very, very, very lightest touch that I could do to give some sensation of connection there. So,
Mm,
and I think,
that's big.
yeah, it's a lot of it is just what the clients teach us about, being unique and being the thinking practitioner. That's
Yeah,
what
well,
yeah,
yes, and touching practitioner, feeling practitioner, all those things, because
yeah,
I was just thinking about those kind of examples too, where I mean, we could do a whole episode on things our clients taught us, but
mm,
how many times it was a revelation to me that the connection was enough.
yeah,
And that's not to say that all I need to do is connect and I'm done.
yeah,
But at the times that I was really thinking of this as a problem to fix, to
yeah,
address someone's pain, for example, or someone's difficulty, and there were times I didn't feel like I found what I was looking for, and yet to realize the fact that we were there together was meaningful, impactful, and helpful for my client
yeah,
is again a big lesson for me too,
yeah.
that made me reevaluate what I even thought it was I was offering
Hmm.
and my role in that interaction.
I
Yeah,
remember one instance when I was working in the orthopedic clinic back at Emory, and this woman had been referred in for massage, and she was, of course, being seen by the physical therapist simultaneously, and she was the sort of typical kind of client of somebody who's in a lot of chronic pain. Nothing works for her. Nothing helps her. She's upset. She is, depressed. She is just not a person who, is really enjoyable to be around sometimes because life has been so difficult for her. And I was getting ready to work on her, and one of the PTs who was the supervising person on that particular case said something to me like, how can you touch her? Like, how do you deal with that? And I'm like, oh my God, this is what's wrong with our healthcare system. It's like,
Mhm.
how can you not uh, touch this person and try to make a connection with them of seeing? And of course, the massage was the one thing that was, saving her at that point of from kind of,
Yes.
being in much worse shape.
You're making me think how our willingness to touch might, it's also a big ask of ourselves, but the fact that we're already there by the time presumably, by the time we see a client, means that we've taken a big step toward that transformative interaction too on our
Yeah,
side.
yeah,
It's the willingness we bring to touch someone that may not be present in a other medical context, say.
yeah. You had
Well,
posted a question here I was curious about,
yeah,
asking about a transformative experience you've had while receiving body work. We talk all the time about giving it,
yeah.
but I was curious to hear what you have you had anything like that that really shaped
Sure.
your understanding of the practice?
Sure. I mean, I'm just thinking, I got really interested in Rolfing when I was in high school. One of my teachers was going through it, and I remember her talking about it, and it was intriguing. She said, "This is not uh, how Rolfing would describe itself," but she said, "Rolfing is something like where they rip your muscles apart to get down to the bone." And I was
Yeah,
like, "Well, what? Why would you do that?" But that sounds really interesting anyway.
yeah,
And I don't know what it says that piqued my interest, but I saved up my money. I found a Rolfer to work with, and at 19, I went through the Rolfing series, and it was a revelation into
mm,
my body. And I remember my hopes and expectations were pretty specific around posture, and that was the way it was being presented a lot of times back then. What I got was some of that, but a lot more body awareness or body experience or body presence than I even knew was possible.
mhm.
The very specific tour through my body. And no, he didn't rip my muscles apart and get down to the bone. He was
I'm
firm,
glad because
old style work, but it was
yeah,
the what it evoked in me was a much subtler and nuanced understanding and experience of being a body and it being in my body. That was a revelation.
mhm.
It really was. I go, oh, this is what it's about. It's about feeling my body and being there and staying present with that.
Yeah. Hmm.
That was the revelation from that one.
Yeah.
Did you have a
I
example?
I did have something that always comes to mind when I think about something like this in terms of a transformative kind of bodywork experience. And this was, oh, I don't know, 3 or 4 years after being out of massage school.
Yeah.
And I got introduced to this woman who was doing a lot of energy work, which was something I wasn't really into at that point, but somebody
Mhm.
had encouraged me to go have a session doing something with her. And she had done, moderately long, typical kind of hour-long session. We were doing something like that. And we were probably 30, 40 minutes into it or something like that. And she had me supine on the treatment table. And she, had just encouraged me to try to relax as much as possible. And she said, I want to try to do some mobility things with you. And she had my feet flat on the massage table, but my, hips kind of flexed. So like knees bent up. And she just told me to relax there. And I started feeling something really weird. It's like I was swaying from side to side, and then it got bigger and bigger. And so, like, I felt my legs swaying from side to side. I felt like she's doing some kind of like really rocking movement thing. And like I opened my eyes, and they were just sitting there, and she was just waving her hands back and forth across my legs. And it's like, that is weird. That is really strange. But I absolutely felt that sense of movement happening in there from
Yes.
energetic work that was going on. So like it, really made me start thinking like I do not know how to explain what this just was, but I will not deny that I felt something really interesting there.
That's, I think that's common for me too, and for a lot of people that we get opened up to other experiences that might not be explainable in our usual frame.
Hmm.
And that exists right alongside being really valuing critical thinking
Yeah.
and evidence, etc. But at the same time, there's a lot that's possible that isn't necessarily easily explainable or understandable.
Yeah.
And so many of those things are what make the experience powerful,
Hmm.
impactful,
Yeah.
special. It's the
And
mystery.
I don't know if we touched on this when we talked about our sort of background stories and things like that in that early episode, but
Uh,
and I'm not sure if I remember you telling me ever before, but how did you get started in teaching?
uh,
Making that transition from practitioner to teacher?
I took a leave of absence from my job at the Essel Institute to go study as a rolfer in Boulder. Went back. I was going back and forth to keep my job some, and there's intervals in the training. And I remember on one of my trips back, the practitioners at Essel were like, "Oh, okay, so what are you learning at the Rolf Institute?" And we were very clear that we weren't supposed to teach what we were learning at the Rolf Institute, but they, I said, I can give you an anatomy catch up of what I'm learning from anatomy. And I remember we just sat in a circle in the yurt there at Esalen, and I took them through like foot anatomy, what I'd learned about foot anatomy. And then they were like, whoa, this is so cool. This is
Mhm.
great. Just to have like the map of the structure and the stuff in there. They were
Yeah.
doing very skilled and intuitive work, but to go through the step-by-step technical aspects and the possibilities that opened up was exciting for all of us.
Yeah.
And then the other part of that is both of my parents were teachers.
I think I
All
remember you telling me that.
four,
Yeah.
yeah, all
Mhm.
four of my grandparents were teachers. I have aunts and uncles on both sides. I have siblings on both sides that are
Uh-huh.
teachers. So
Yeah,
there's just some teacher gene going on here
for sure. Yeah.
that's where that really drew me. And then I started getting invitations and started looking for them. And that eventually became one of the big focuses of what I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you, how did you make that
I
transformation?
was one of those many people who have had that the experience from years of being on staff at a massage school doing some sort of assistant teaching, and the curriculum director said, "Okay, you're going to be a teacher now." And I said, "I am not ready to do this." And they said, "Oh, yes, you are." And you basically just got thrown in the classroom. And in hindsight, of course, I feel like that is a terrible method of teacher training preparation, and it is,
Really? The
yes.
throw them in thing? You don't, that's
No,
not the way to
not
do it?
into that at all. Very unsatisfactory for the students because we have, teachers not knowing really what they're doing in a lot of those
Yeah.
situations. So, but I sort of also recognized at this point, they had put me in there with, teaching. Like nobody wants to teach in the night program. So that's where all the, people who don't want to do stuff in the daytime get thrown into the night program. And this is like, you're working with adult learners a lot who are
Yeah.
working all day long and they're coming to school at night and
They're
they're
tired.
burned out. They're tired. They're just
Yes.
not into this. And, I was about 20, what was I, like 27, 28 at that time or something like that, I
Uh-huh.
think. And I've always looked really young and I looked like I was 17, at that time. Like I really looked young. And I thought, I am never going to get any respect from these people if I don't really know what I'm talking about. And so that was for me kind of like the kicker that got me going on, like I'm going to have to really, really know what I'm doing to be able to talk about this stuff and get any kind of
Uh,
credibility from people. And so
uh,
that just kind of like got it started. Then I realized I really like this. I really
yeah,
like sharing things and opening people's eyes and seeing the light bulbs go off and
that's
everything.
right.
So yeah,
That's right. That's the reward.
yeah,
And and the way that keeps us honest and for me, accountable. There's nothing like a deadline or having a class to teach to make sure that I'm current on what I'm saying and that I'm connected to it. And
yeah,
that's been helpful for me too as a learner and as a practitioner to need to stay more on my cutting edge than I might if I wasn't teaching.
yeah, yeah.
All right. How about relationships? Have there been impacts on your relationships outside of massage and body work because you do this work?
I think so. I mean, I think just in general, it's certainly encouraged me to be a far more compassionate person
Uh,
because I'm seeing so many situations of recognizing the difficulties that so many people are grappling with. So
Compassion.
um, I think that's probably the biggest things. And then just sort of seeing and watching a lot more personal dynamics because there's so much about our client therapist interaction process that's about how do we get into that therapeutic space with another person and
Mhm.
be empathetic, but also be a listener and really pay attention to what's going on with them. So it's sort of forced and encouraged me to be a lot more of a quiet listener person to really kind of get a sense of what's
Mhm.
happening there in relationship wise with people. So
Mhm.
those things cross over a great deal, I think, from personal life and relationships into what we do and how we act in the clinic.
I think that's true for me too. I'll just, for counterpoint, say it's also taught me a lot about boundaries,
Hmm.
about the other side of that, which is to the limits of when I can and can't help or engage, and just needing to develop the boundaries around a practice or client interactions, and the ways those would become challenging, maybe with friends or family, and working through those, and sometimes muddling my way through for sure. I think and the pendulum swung back and forth over the decades as I see between being really open and willing and really cautious and careful about my own time or energy. But I think it's helped me find a much more generous place in myself as well as compassionate because I mean, the point of boundaries is to have enough containment or protection that our hearts can be open.
Yeah. Mhm.
And that's that finding that, navigating that, being able to manage that, or talk about it if need be, or just embody that has really helped me, I think, give a lot more in
Yeah.
a way that's sustainable and is
Mhm.
actually useful too.
Yeah. There's it. It's so interesting that I think it's a lot of times very difficult to kind of find the the boundaries, between those kinds of things of what we are doing and learning as part of our practice and what we are doing and learning as part of being in our life outside of that treatment room, but
Yeah.
bringing those things together in many different and unique ways. And I talk to the students a lot about this and just say like who you are really matters. Probably a lot more than what the techniques are that you have under your belt or the certifications on your wall and things like that. It's really, really crucial to put attention on those kinds of things and be that person as much as you can everywhere in your life because it does cut across and really share so much.
Hmm. It's very true. I mean, we could talk for a while about that.
Hmm.
We got more questions we could talk about too. What's important here as we're winding up the conversation
Yeah.
to touch on as well.
Yeah. So, what else do we have we were going to try to touch base on here? You had said this is another question too. You wanted to that you had put on there. I thought was really good. Balancing sort of the physical and emotional demands that this work
Yes,
has
yes,
while maintaining your own well-being, and obviously that there's a lot of things everybody has to think about, like with what's going on in their own lives and how do they
yeah,
not to bring that into the treatment room and things like that. So
yeah, yeah, yeah. I want to hear your views on it too, but
yeah.
I think immediately about uh, raising a kid, and I work in my neighborhood. I don't work in my home, but
Mhm.
we worked, my office is very close by. And there were times, especially in the teenage years, where it was like going right from time with my difficult kid into a session, say,
Mhm.
and just the practice I got at that separation, and yet still being very present and genuine with someone, or the personal challenges I went through with my health, and then having to navigate working or not working during that time. Again, how to balance or make room for myself and still show up for other people. When to say yes, when to say no. But then also, I think in those examples, it was being able to be completely present with the client in a way that left both of us usually feeling much better at the end of the session.
Yeah. So would you say that you have some particularly specific or useful strategies about how do you make that shift? I think about like what you were saying there. I get that completely because
Yeah,
I'm in
I'm glad you're
mindsets
asking
like
me
that
to
sometimes.
be specific. I
Yeah.
think it's present moment awareness. That's my basic strategy or technique. Is
Yeah.
okay, I'm here now. I'm with this person now. Let me look at them. Let me see them. Let me feel my body now.
Hmm.
And if I'm remembering that, what just happened with my kid, I'm going to bring my awareness back to this moment and just rest into what this person's telling me.
Yeah.
If I had to pick one thing I do, it's present moment awareness of both where I am and how I feel in my own body.
Hmm. Yeah.
I mean, that's maybe sounds really simple, but that's not easy, and that's been the big one.
Yeah.
How would
You had
you?
you had asked something earlier too in a sort of list of questions that we had put together here about how you approach what you're doing in the treatment room. Like, is it kind of meditative for you, or how do you kind
Uh,
of like
what
orient
a,
your mindset around that? I think that has oftentimes a lot to do with this. Would
that's
you say
right.
that that's been true for you?
Yeah, that's the practice. It's
Yeah.
how do I, especially balancing like strategy for the session, the time left, what the client wants, what I want to do, and present moment awareness, and helping the client track their own present moment awareness. That's the dance,
Yeah.
and that's the weaving of the moment there.
Yeah. I think
What
that's
do you do? How do you
Yeah,
do?
I was going to say that's very similar to I'm again so very thankful that I spent a lot of years studying meditation and mindfulness and those kinds of practices, because it is easy to kind of get off track and let your mind start, really running things, and then you're all of a sudden you're not paying attention to what you're doing. And
Mhm.
clearly, I think that degree of attentive awareness is so critical for being very effective in what
Mhm.
we're doing at every moment in the treatment room. So for me, I try to really um, be in both a space of openness and quiet and listening to what's going on, but also really try to zero in on a degree of intense awareness, like
Mm.
really, visualizing anatomy as I'm working on person, listening to what I
Mhm.
feel in terms of tissue responses and tissue reactions. And really, it's
Mhm.
that, super hyper focused intent awareness about what's happening there
Yeah,
that I think really allows you to be very, very good and highly specific with people. And I just want to say this too, because I think a lot of people recognize this, or maybe they don't recognize why this is an issue. But when you do that all day long,
yeah.
you're drained. I mean,
Oh.
you are really drained with that kind of
Mm.
intense, hyper focused awareness about what's going on with people. It takes a lot of mental, emotional energy, I think, to do that well. So taking care of yourself in that process, I think is absolutely critical for everybody.
I know what you mean by drained.
Yeah.
And I'm also thinking about how sometimes I'm so nourished, I'm so filled. Maybe
Uh-huh.
it's a question of how much, because I've had a very small practice for a number of years. In fact, I'm just now, after taking about a year off to care for my wife and walk through that process, I'm just now getting back into seeing clients again. But because I've had the teaching other things, I had the luxury of seeing very few clients. And I found that to be very nourishing. I mean, certainly days that I was seeing 5 clients a day, 5 days a week, long sessions, I know what you mean by drained.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
do. Maybe it's a question of scale. But that's
Yeah.
that's for me, it's been one of the lessons too, is how to arrange things so that I really am nourished by what I do.
Hmm. Yeah.
Mm.
And I find that too from for the teaching perspective also to be
Yeah.
very different from me because at the end of a long teaching day, I am a totally different kind of tired than I am after another kind of, day at work or day working in the yard
Oh
doing
yeah.
physical labor or something like that. It's
Oh
really an
yeah.
emotional, attentive, like there's too much brain synapse stuff
Uh-huh.
that needs to rest. It's like
Uh-huh.
you feel like, at least I do, like I'm, traveling and then there's the hotel stuff. And like all I can do is go back and just watch, you know, very bad television at night. That's all my brain can handle,
Mhm.
just sort of unwind.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. But it's sort of a place that we may wind up a little bit. I'd love to hear what you have advice for
Oh.
seasoned practitioners or even for the people just getting going here in terms of how this may impact, influence, or change your life. Do you have any kind of attentive advice
Boy,
that would be good for folks?
I put that question in there, but
Yeah.
I didn't think about it yet. So this is going to be off the top of my head. I thought I was going to ask you that question. That's good. What advice would I give seasoned practitioners or people just starting out? Uh, I would say look for the aspect that is meaningful personally for
Hmm.
you. That means maybe it is the professional fulfillment. Maybe it is having a way to help people. Maybe it is giving the flexibility that this could give you. Maybe it's, offering something of value. I don't know. There's some aspect of this that's going to be meaningful to each of us personally.
Yeah.
And that's the gold. That's the thing to shore up, build around, hold and cherish
Hmm.
preciously and find ways to support. And I guess it's also mentoring. Thank goodness for my mentors and the people that cared enough about me to spend time with me as even still,
Yeah.
learning capacity.
Yeah. There's a there was I'm sure you remember hearing this, but this is probably like maybe late 80s, early 90s, something like that, a marketing advertising slogan that the US Navy put out there. It's not just a job, it's an adventure. And I think that's a lot of where it is too, of just
Mhm.
recognizing this isn't just a job or an occupation, really. It
Uh-huh.
is in fact a calling. For many people who get into this and recognize that they have a really unique place in doing things for people in a very different way. It's an important calling to take very, very seriously, and not just look at it as, here's what I do in my 9 to 5.
If it was just a job, it would kind of suck as a
Uh-huh.
job, even. It's not even that great a
Yeah.
job,
Yeah.
but as a calling, wow, pretty
Mhm.
amazing.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah. We learn so much and we have so many opportunities. Just one other thing I just wanted to put a plug in here and say about this whole thing that we were talking about in terms of how it has changed your life. I have
Tell
to
us.
admit,
Yes.
I am so incredibly fortunate to have met so many wonderful people throughout our
Oh,
field and
yeah.
throughout the time that I've spent here.
Mhm.
Yourself included, of course, and
Mhm.
many other wonderful, wonderful, inspiring individuals, from the people that everybody knows about that are famous to the people who are doing things in very unique ways and don't get any credit or attention to what they're doing. I feel so inspired by the work they do on a day-to-day basis, and it reinvigorates and refreshes my belief of why I'm still at this, 3.5 decades on.
I
So
think you're right. There's like inspiring people that get called to do this, and I get a lot of uh, inspiration and companionship and joy from those connections too that I've made in this field, including with yourself, Whitney.
yeah. So I think I'm going to still do it next year.
Okay.
Come up to that
All right.
evaluation.
I'm
You're like,
in.
am I going
Me
to stick
too.
with it? Am I going to keep doing this? Yeah, I think I'll keep doing it at least one more year.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, all right. Well, that was an interesting discovery process down that road. We also are going to give a big thanks and shout out here to our sponsor, Books of
Oh, yeah.
Discovery, who has been a part of the massage therapy and bodywork world for over 25 years. Nearly 3,000 schools around the globe teach with their textbooks, e-textbooks, and digital resources. Books of Discovery likes to say learning adventures start here, and they find that same spirit here on the Thinking Practitioner podcast and are proud to support our work, knowing that we share the mission to bring the massage and bodywork community thought-provoking and enlivening content that advances our profession.
And we got to get them on the podcast. We did get some of those good people here to tell
Yeah.
their stories somewhere too. But while I'm thinking about it, thank you, Books of Discovery, for that nice Christmas package you sent me of some nice snacks and a nice card. I'm going to
Yeah.
send you a thank you card back. But in the meantime, instructors of manual therapy education programs can request complimentary copies of Books of Discovery's textbooks to review for use in their programs. Please reach out at booksofdiscovery.com. Listeners can explore their collection of learning resources for anatomy, pathology, kinesiology, physiology, ethics, and business mastery at booksofdiscovery.com, where thinking practitioner listeners like you save 15% by entering thinking at checkout.
And of course, we would like to say a thank you to all of our listeners for hanging out with us here today and to our sponsors. You can stop by our sites for video, show notes, transcripts, and any extras. You can find references to that over on my site at academyofclinicalmassage.com. And Til, where can they find that for you?
Advanced-trainings.com. And hey, we do want to hear your story. How has massage or bodywork or manual therapy changed your life? Send us a message or record a short voice memo on your phone and email it to us at info@thethinkingpractitioner.com or look for us on social media. I am at Til Luchau. Whitney, where can people find you?
And find me also under my name, Whitney Lowe, on social as well. You can rate us on Apple Podcasts, as it does help other people find the show. And you can hear us wherever you happen to listen to your podcast. So please do share the word, tell a friend, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next episode.
I'll look forward to that. Thanks, Whitney.
All right. Thank you.